Seconds. Good morning, everybody. I'm Brian McCoy, and today we have with us Carlton Mayers. He's with our NAACP Criminal Justice Department, and also Brendan Mitchell. He's one of our National Youth Board members for the NAACP. Thank you for joining us today. Carlton, tell us a little bit about why we're here.
Well, good morning, everybody. I just want to let you know, very happy to have you all on air with us today for the launch of the Born Suspect campaign, which is the whole point of the campaign is to educate NAACP members and branch leaders on, the End Racial Profiling Act, which was introduced a couple of weeks ago in the House of Congress, and also to encourage and try to, get y'all to get in touch with your representative and also with your senators, if so, and let them know to sign on and help get the ERPA, the End Racial Profiling Act, passed. Now, I'm sure some of y'all are wondering what exactly is ERPA, this you're mentioning, or the End Racial Profiling Act. Well, it's a piece of federal legislation that addresses racial profiling, the practice of it being conducted by police, law enforcement officers, and not just on a federal scale, but also on the state and local level. Now, what that entails, what that includes, is an explicit definition of exactly what racial profiling is and what that includes, which it now doesn't just include race and ethnicity, but also gender, gender identification, and sexual orientation as well within that definition of racial profiling under ERPA. There's also an explicit ban on racial profiling, so it just straight up says clearly that it prohibits law enforcement practice of racial profiling, and it also provides for the retraining and training of law enforcement officers in racial profiling, also bias, de-escalation, communication skills, any kind of skills that would benefit in changing the practice of racial profiling to allow for more fair and equitable serving of the public by law enforcement. And then something else it also does, which is very important, is that it requires for data collection, analysis, and publication. Now, why is that important? It's important because in order for us to address a problem, you need to first know what it is and know all the details about it. And the only way to do that, you need that data. And so the data collection comes in place for that, and it does require that under ERPA. And then finally, it also provides for accountability for law enforcement who engage in racial profiling, and not just for law enforcement officers that engage in it, but their supervisors, the law enforcement department that the officer is affiliated with. And that could be through either injunctive or declaratory relief. I know some people are like, what's all this legal jargon you're saying? Well, what that means is that the court, if they find that you are guilty, being the law enforcement officer, or the law enforcement department that the officer is from, that you're guilty of practicing and engaging in racial profiling on an ongoing basis, especially, then the court can say, well, we want you to stop that. And what that could mean is something similar to what happened in Ferguson after the Department of Justice Ferguson report was released, and you started seeing all the dominoes falling, where you saw the city manager resigned, you saw that the police chief resigned, other members of law enforcement who engaged in racial profiling, which came out through emails, they resigned, including in the court itself. There was a court clerk who also resigned for using racially derogatory terms in regards to email. So either way, it's all about doing away with the bad seeds and then replacing them with other individuals. So therefore, you are now restructuring the whole department from the inside out. And that's what an injunctive relief would do. And under ERPA, that allows for individuals or individual who is a victim of racial profiling to file a claim to allow that, to make that happen through the court system. So this is why it's important. At least that's what it does. And the reason why it's important, I wanted to say real quick, is because, you look at all these incidences, like most recently with Freddie Gray in Baltimore. There was a recent stat that came out from the ACLU around April 1st of this year, and it said that for the month of March, there were at least 3 police deaths a day, police officer involved deaths a day, for the month of March this year alone. I mean, that's 3 a day at least. On average, that's kind of intense. So something needs to be done in regards to making sure that we know what's going on and why it's happening, and we know all the details about it. So that way, if there's any kind of police misconduct involved in those deaths, it's not justified, then something has to be done and that they're held accountable. And so, yeah, that's why it's important. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. What we're having with NAACP, with the Born Suspect campaign, we are having a week of education. So this is beginning our week of education, and next week will be our week of action. And we have Brendan Mitchell. He's going to tell us a little bit about that week of action.
Uh, thank you so much, Brian and Carlton, and good morning to everyone who is watching and a part of this hangout. So to talk about the week of action, and briefly in particular about the Youth and College Division aspect of the Born Suspect campaign and what exactly we are doing. Born Suspect is kind of like a continuation of the Youth and College Division's I Matter campaign, but now taken to another level, obviously, to pass ERPA. But we started the I Matter campaign in October of 2014, and it was to bring about education and get units on the ground across the country advocating for the police review boards, for the proper surveillance cameras. And so that, I feel, is somewhat carrying over into what we want to do with ERPA and the Born Suspect campaign. But now we're doing more legislative advocacy. So when we talk about that week of action, I know we want to be very engaged in social media. In particular, next Monday, we want in units across the country, all of you, to begin some in-district representative visits. So your representative or senators' local offices in their states, visiting those offices and beginning to push for this legislation to be passed. We're also doing some national call-ins, encouraging Congress to support ERPA. And then we want to take this social media aspect of the campaign to the next level with some racial profiling graphics that will be shared on social media for us to really beef up the work that we're doing on the ground as an association. Social media is our power structure at this point, and it's been proven throughout the past year in particular when it comes to the issues of racial profiling that it is the most effective way for us to do advocacy work and to educate our people who may not be involved with the association. So those are just a few things that we are pushing out with this Born Suspect campaign and the work that we plan to do with the Youth and College Division.
Okay, that's great. Now, for the in-district visits, a lot of people may wonder, like, what does that entail? Because they think that sometimes you have to go to DC to talk to your representative. But tell them a little bit about like once they get find their representative, like what do they actually do once they get there?
Is that me or Carlton?
Oh, just you or Carlton.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm gonna let you grab it, Brendan.
Okay, I can speak honestly from personal experience as someone who used to work in the office of the senator that the in-district visits that you do locally can be just as effective as if you were in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, especially if we are coming with the numbers to their offices and also making sure that we are keeping the level of correspondence up that's coming through their offices. It is very effective. In particular, I would say that we have to be strategic in terms of when we make the visits. It would be great to try to make those visits around the senator or representative schedules if they are home in their districts. But that's just my little perspective on how we still can be effective, even if all of our units aren't traveling to Washington, D.C.
Right. Okay, thanks, Brendan. Carlton, a lot of people are asking the question, why now? Why do we need ERPA now? Do you mind answering that question for people that's wondering why are we pushing this now?
Well, number one, I want to say that is a very good question to ask. And number two, the reason why we need it now is I mean, I know for me, I mean, seeing all these videos coming up seems like once every week, if not every 2 weeks, maybe even more often than that, of another brother or sister, you know, who's getting shot down by the police, who is unarmed, and just trying to figure out what happened in the situation and where is justice, where is the accountability, you know, because we don't have something already in place, a piece of legislation to say, okay, we require the data on every police stop to know what's involved in those police stops.
Right.
It's very hard for us to address these issues like Freddie Gray. I mean, you look at the Freddie Gray case, for example, and right now, what's everybody talking about? They're talking about why was he stopped in the first place?
Right.
You know, it was an unlawful stop, unlawful arrest, and I believe that was the charge given to the officers, or at least one of the charges. And so, you know, it would be, you know, if ERPA was already in place, the In-Racial Profiling Act, we would already have data from years ago in Baltimore leading up to this point to find out what's been going on with their stops. Have their stops been lawful? You know, who are they stopping? For what reason? Are they receiving an arrest or a summons? Was any contraband found? Any weapons? So on and so forth. And that information we don't have. And what that does is it leaves the door open for that gray area where you have law enforcement officers who, I'm not saying that these are the majority of law enforcement. I think the majority, I want to say number one, I think the majority of law enforcement, they wake up every day and they take their job serious and they want to go out there, do well to help the community, and that they care about how the community, how they see them, you know, and that they live up to that ideal. But you do have those few bad seeds, which make up the minority of law enforcement, who take advantage of that gray area. And that's why it's very important that we do away with the gray area and bring about more clarity. And the way to do that is to make sure that we receive that data. You know, I think that that's one of the most important pieces of the In-Racial Profiling Act. Because once you have the data, you have the information, and now you can come up with a solution, you know, to address the issue. And I mean, for me and for NAACP, you know, we are focused especially, you know, it's very important to hold those accountable for what they've, the law enforcement officers in the Freddie Gray case and Michael Brown and so on cases, Eric Gardner, et cetera, et cetera. But it's even more important to prevent these acts from occurring again going into the future. And so we're really focused on preventative measures. And the In-Racial Profiling Act allows through the data collection, especially, and the training of law enforcement, you know, but especially the data collection, because once we know what the issue is, we know what the problem is, then we can come up with a solution to address it. And I do want to use this moment to make a plug-in. For all those that don't know, this is the Born Suspect Report. This is what the campaign is about right here. Please go out on NAACP's website or even Google NAACP Born Suspect. All the information you need to address racial profiling in your community is right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlton, for helping us get, you know, more information about ERPA. And also, Brendan, thank you for stopping by, talking about our week of action. You guys can take part. You can go to naacp.org/racial profiling or naacpconnect.org, where there are resources to help you this week and next week really take on ERPA and pushing it towards Congress so that we can get that on the top of their agenda. Thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of the week. And make sure to go to naacp.org/racial profiling. Thanks.